that time again. But let's start with Grace. Hello, my name is Daniel. I'm your host here.
Guy in the chair.
He said it. He said it.
And today we're going to be watching The Critical Drinker and his thoughts on the Acolyte and how the ratings were horrible. But give him a follow if you haven't. So let's check it out. Enjoy. So enjoy.
Fine. Acceptable. Decent.
TikTok
These are all
shop.
words that I think neatly describe Star Wars Skeleton Crew. It was a fun, well-meaning, inoffensive little romp of a show, reliably entertaining without being particularly memorable, surprisingly free of the tedious identity politics that have blighted most of modern Star Wars, with a likeable cast of characters who played well off each other, and a capable big-name star at its censor who understood his assignment and delivered exactly what was expected of him. A show that took no particular risks and pushed no boundaries, that had no aspirations for anything bigger or grander, but instead just got its head down and told its story without fuss or pretense. A story of space pirates and adventure and cool aliens, of space battles and hidden treasure and deadly traps, of friendship and camaraderie, and even a charming little subtext about learning to accept people's differences and limitations that didn't make me want to shower in bleach afterwards. If it was a restaurant, it would be a humble little village pub, cozy and well used and maybe a bit old fashioned, serving up simple, unpretentious food that goes well with a pint or two and doesn't cost the earth. And when you leave, you end up thinking to yourself, not a bad place that, might pop in again sometime. What I'm saying is that under normal circumstances, I'd actually consider Skeleton Crew a bit of a win for Star Wars fans. Not an epic win by any stretch, and nothing that's going to change the landscape of the franchise forever, but a decent little show that managed to not piss anyone off, did exactly what it was designed to do, and then bowed out gracefully. A show that proved there's other stories to be told in the Star Wars universe that don't have to revolve around Jedi and lightsabers and desperate nostalgia baits. The kind of thing that parents could happily watch along with their kids once a week, and everyone involved would come away feeling like they hadn't just wasted 30 minutes of their lives. Unlike other shows I could mention.
No.
The power of
There's just one small problem in all of this. Nobody fucking watched it. According to Nielsen's streaming data, the show premiered with the lowest viewership of any Star Wars series ever in its first week, with only 380 million minutes watched. Jesus, that's even worse than The Acolyte, the previous record holder for worst Star Wars reception ever.
Son of a...
It didn't even make it into Disney's top 10 originals chart, and it was only downhill from there. Basically, Skeleton Crew launched without hype or fanfare and then pretty much disappeared entirely before it was even over. Now, if I was in the mood for pointing the finger of blame, and I am, then I could probably single out a few points of failure for this one. And when talking about failures, they really don't come much bigger than The Acolyte. Honestly, the more I think about that fucking show, the more I realise just how much damage it actually did to the Star Wars brands, which wasn't exactly gleaming and shiny to begin with. It really was a culmination of everything that people had come to despise about Disney Star Wars. A perfect storm of shitty writing, incompetent acting and directing, rampant identity politics, shameless girl bossing, and a weird sex-obsessed showrunner who compensated for her total lack of Star Wars understanding by inserting fucked-up romantic subplots into a story that absolutely didn't support them. It was a disaster in every possible way, ridiculed by pretty much everyone to the point where even Disney had to concede defeat by cancelling it, and it really did expose just how bad Star Wars had gotten. Now there was just no hiding it anymore, no pretending that the brand was still thriving on Disney Plus, and inevitably the shockwaves of that show's failure were going to damage anything within the blast radius, which just so happened to include Skeleton Crew. I am fully willing to bet that a good chunk of this show's potential audience took one look at The Acolyte and thought, nah, I don't think Star Wars is for me anymore. It certainly didn't kill the show all by itself, but it definitely didn't help it either. Another problem facing Skeleton Crew is that there was no particular draw for this show, either in the characters or the cast. Yeah, Jude Law's definitely a good actor, and without doubt the best thing about Skeleton Crew, but he's not exactly well known to little kids who are the target audience for this one. The characters are all original creations as well, and as much as I respect the show for not relying on nostalgia bait and key jangling, the sad reality is that most of what passes for the Star Wars fan base these days are only going to respond to instantly recognizable characters like Darth Vader or Luke Skywalker or Obi-Wan Kenobi, so they can get the quick dopamine hit of seeing something familiar in a new context. Liv.
He made it! He made it!
This is the kind of person that gets excited by Star Wars now.
Fuck.
Take Andor, for example, arguably the single best piece of storytelling that Disney have ever managed to do in the Star Wars universe. A smart, mature, complex take on the franchise with superb acting and top-notch directing and cinematography. And another show that nobody fucking watched, nobody talked about, and which basically disappeared without a trace after it was over. Why? Because nobody in the modern Star Wars fandom knew or cared about Cassian Andor, so his presence didn't provide that big dopamine hit that they were looking for. If the showrunners had thrown in Chewbacca and the Millennium Falcon and a digitally de-aged Han Solo and maybe some shameless Darth Vader cameos and then plastered them all over the advertising, I'm willing to bet that the show would have done way better. And that is a pretty sad state of affairs, let me tell you. The point I'm making here is that if Star Wars was actually a healthy, thriving brand with a highly engaged fan base, then it wouldn't have to keep relying on 40-year-old characters and ships and iconography to generate interest in new projects. The fans would actually be excited for each new show, and sure, some would inevitably do better than others, but people would at least be willing to give them a shot. That's not happening anymore because Star Wars isn't a healthy brand. It's a dying brand with a string of failed projects dragging down its reputation and an increasingly bored, cynical, and disengaged fan base that are no longer willing to give it the benefit of the doubt. The default expectation for each new project now seems to be, it'll probably suck. It's created a hostile environment where new shows on Disney Plus now have an uphill battle just to be given a fair shot, and most of them don't even make it that far. Skeleton Crew failed not because it was a bad show, but because it was part of a bad franchise. It died and Star Wars killed it. And realistically, when is that likely to change? The next big show coming up is Andor Season 2, and considering the first season didn't exactly set the franchise on fire, what do you expect the sequel's likely to achieve? The Mandalorian and Grogu movie? Wouldn't exactly expect great things from that either. The disastrous failure of Season 3 proved that they've mined that particular property for all it's worth, and I don't imagine a movie's going to turn things around anytime soon. And then there's the Rey Palpatine movie. That project was announced almost 2 years ago, and in that time it's progressed about as much as George R.R. Martin's work on Winds of Windsor. There's actually rumours circulating now that Disney are considering shelving the Star Wars brand to focus on salvaging what's left of the MCU, because that was once profitable. And while I generally put as much stock in them as a New Year's resolution from Boogie, it seems to me that that's exactly what Star Wars needs now. A rest, preferably for 5 to 10 years. Enough time to ditch the current crop of village idiots working at Lucasfilm, allow the fan base to slowly forget the nightmare of the past decade, and then relaunch it under a new format. That is the only way you're likely to revitalize this thing. Until then, you should probably prepare yourselves for more Skeleton Crews, because the worst is very much still to come. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.
Hey guys, I don't know about y'all, but after hearing that, it just made me think of the Simpsons episode where I forget the name of the guy who was telling him, "Stop! He's already dead." But that is just me. I enjoy the Skeleton Crew and kind of Andor. Not really, but there are certain parts. But hey, we all like different things, and that's okay. There's say like, comment, share, and subscribe. But I'll leave you with this. I hope you had an awesome night and the rest of your day you're doing well. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.